All right, in today's video, we are discussing, is the gold and commodities bull market over? Everyone's a little unsure what exactly is going on right now in the markets. And today we have Andrew from Phoenix Gold. And this is a company we discussed on the channel quite a while ago before they had a quite parabolic move in the stock. And I saw a lot of people write me and just say how happy they were about getting in right before a parabolic move is always good. But we've got a lot of uncertainty in the markets. We got the treasury yields rising. And so today we're going to be discussing this commodities and precious metals bull market and Phoenix Gold with Andrew. So make sure that you hit the like button on this side right over there, this side right over there. Give us your gold and copper price predictions for 2021 in the comments right there down below, and we'll see who's going to be the lucky winner. So Andrew, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right. So, you own Phoenix Gold. You guys got, we've discussed on the channel, you guys got a pretty wide range of resources and assets. And all of this being so, your 50% partnership with Newmont, you got a lot of copper, you got a lot of gold. And so, you're seeing the market from all angles right now. And obviously, especially copper, but all commodities had a fantastic run. And, there's been in some commodities, in gold and such, it's been a longer correction, but copper's been going straight up. And now we see the 10-year rising, and people are saying, is this commodities market over, or is it just beginning? Why don't you fill us in a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just at the beginning. I mean, we've kind of been in this sort of cycle for a little bit, but it's, I think we're really just, the big game changer is going to be how we come out of this pandemic. I mean, you and I talked a little bit before the show here. And, as the economies come on, how does that affect inflation? How does that affect the dollar? And, I think if you roll back to 2008, we went into sort of a run from 2009 to 2011. So I think history is going to repeat itself. And I think, gold's been, lagging a little bit, but I think come, second half of the year, you're going to see it, right back where it's supposed to be. So anyway, Phoenix Gold, I think we've done quite well. I think when I just checked, I got a little pop-up on my window saying that we're in the top 50 best performers in the month of March in the metals market. So, I think we're doing good. I think the project's been well received. We've got good exposure on copper, and our projects in Nevada are, it's we're in a very good jurisdiction. So, exposed to gold, silver, copper, zinc. We're covering quite a few bases. We're really in a position to capture the economies if they do come on very strong, and we're also exposed to areas that kind of give us a hedge if inflation goes out of control. So
how would you describe, I want to get in a little bit to infrastructure type of deals. Biden administration has floated for about a week now, $4 trillion. It seems to be the number they're floated now on infrastructure. And you would think there's going to be a lot of iterations of these types of things from governments across the world. So I want to get into infrastructure, how you see that affecting copper and, some of the other resources you hold. But first, when I profiled and I discussed Phoenix Gold, and what got me interested in your company was, I wouldn't call you just your name is Phoenix Gold, but you're kind of you're a quasi-hybrid type of company with a lot of diversification. How would you describe, we'll discuss more some of the goals and stuff, but just real quick, how would you describe it? Is it just a gold company? Is it a copper company? Is it a hybrid mining company?
I think Phoenix Gold is, if you just looked at the name, it's Phoenix Gold, right? But we're definitely into, the strategy is a little bit more diverse. We knew what was sort of happening on the whole electric vehicle industry. And we wanted to get into a sort of a base metal that was exposed to the whole EV revolution here. And, that's why we got into York Harbor. Our assets in Nevada is just, it's focused on gold, obviously, copper as well. But it was more of it's a legacy project in the company. And right now we have many different options on how to best extract value out of those properties. And we're exploring them now. Now that we have York Harbor, it puts us in a better position to do more with our assets in Nevada. So I'm very excited about our situation, our current position. And, I think we're ready to sort of capitalize on, sort of the moves that we've seen with copper. I mean, copper is probably one of the best performing metals in terms of price. And, you talked about infrastructure. You can't build infrastructure without copper. It's just not possible.
Yeah, one of the sides against the bull market that someone might make is, hey, look, the global economy's been shut down, and the fact is we're in a depression, and so commodities are going nowhere. And maybe there's some merit to it, but the fact is clear that they're going to print more money. And then when I think about it, even if we are in a more depression-like environment, to me, it seems very evident that the supply and demand fundamentals for infrastructure commodities are still going to have their tug of war, because even in a depression environment with Biden saying these infrastructure bills, I would imagine this is only the beginning of a lot of infrastructure bills. And where is this going, right? A lot of this is going to have to go to renewable EV movement, things like that. So it seems like even in an environment like that, your York Harbor and copper in general, I feel like should at least be moving in this attractive supply and demand fundamentals. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, you brought up a very, very good point: supply and demand. The reason why the price has moved on copper is because there's sort of there's a certain stock of copper out there, and that stockpile is getting whittled down. And eventually you get into a situation where demand exceeds supply, and that's why you're seeing the prices where they are. So, good question to ask is, like, do we foresee further demand, or do we see further supply degradation? Because those are all things that are going to affect the price of copper. And I expect that we're going to see sort of this sustained deficit when it comes to copper. And I'm not a economist or a financial analyst, but we're talking about what tools the governments have. They basically have two tools: either raise interest rates or you print more money. And from what you're telling me, this $4 trillion, is that what you said?
That's what they're floating out right now. That's where it's been.
So I think they're leaning towards, hey, let's just keep printing more money to sustain, right? And, eventually that money flows out and it affects commodities and I think most asset classes in general, you're going to see them moving, which, in a way, it's kind of a self-fulfilling sort of, rule in why I'm here, talking about Phoenix Gold, because I think we'll benefit from the rise in commodity prices moving forward.
And did looking at that as well as the EV renewable situation, from the United States' demand to China's demand all over the world, is that what compelled you? Is that what made you take a bigger picture and say that the York Harbor was, because before you had the Nevada asset, you're with Newmont, it's kind of a gold company, but was that a component?
100%. We were specifically looking for projects. In fact, we last year we were looking for nickel projects, and we actually came close to getting one nickel project signed up. But unfortunately, we kind of lost the sort of the bidding war. York Harbor with copper, a lot of people don't quite realize that there's significant amount of copper that goes into an electric car. I think just under 200 pounds of copper
Oh,
in a
wow.
full plug-in. But with that, you also have the charging stations, which requires copper. The infrastructure to deliver power, once again, copper, and then as you get into sort of the renewables like wind turbines and things like that, I mean, there's an immense amount of um, copper that goes into a wind turbine. I think per megawatt, it's something like 2.5 tons to 6 tons of copper. So, it's I think it's a good place to be if you have a copper project. And because York Harbor was a past producing mine, right now we're working very hard to get a sort of a 3D model built out to give us a visual of, what exactly is there. And it'll give us a better sense of, can we bring it back into production? How much work do we need to do to get it to a level where we can prove up the resource that was left behind? All these little things. It'll give us a much better picture, so to speak. And that's kind of why I'm excited. And I think the electric car that's the way things are moving right now. I think Volkswagen is building out a couple of gigafactories in Europe right now, and it's if that's the trend, and if they get to 30 million cars a year, it that's a lot of demand. So we're very excited to be in the copper space.
How much copper is mined a year? Do you know?
I don't know exactly how much is mined, but some of the big mines down in Chile, like for example, BHP, when their CEO was talking about their project, um, think they're sort of running, they've hit their peaks. So they're already talking about their production falling, 10 to 12% where from past years. So, these are all things that as a whole, we're talking about the role of the junior miners. Their job is to get out, find, find the raw materials, build up the resource, do some of the development work, and then, typically sell it off to the bigger guys to, start production and get the mines. Typically infrastructure projects will, infrastructure for building out a mine requires quite a bit of capital. For junior miners like us, our role is to really go find the metal in the ground. And it's easier to find the metal when it's a past producing mine, and that's sort of our situation. And for so many years, I think there's been a deficit also in explorers. So the guys who would go out looking for these copper projects and developing them, they kind of disappeared, and we're kind of playing catch up. So it all comes back to supply and demand right now. Is that if the mines that are in existence, and they're seeing, hey, we're seeing less production coming out, and the flow of mines coming on, or the stream of mines coming online, you've got a little bit of a time gap. Well, the pressure is going to be on prices, and I think the pressure is going to be to push prices higher as demand actually grows.
Yeah, you said 30, if 30 million electric vehicles come online, you said there's what, 300 pounds of copper per. That's a lot of additional copper that you're looking at there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the electric car market right now, I think it, depending on which region of the world you're in, it only accounts for what, less than 10%. So, you're talking this massive shift in how, you're going from, combustion engines to, EV. And it's like, yeah, that's huge. Absolutely huge. I mean, construction probably consumes the most amount of copper. from building buildings to, building new neighborhoods, all requires a lot of copper. And I think the split is about 40% goes towards the construction market. So if the EV market all of a sudden starts sucking up a good amount of copper that's coming out, the pressure's there. So when there's pressure, demand exceeds supply, you're definitely looking at higher prices.
So obviously that's, one of the attractive components of Phoenix Gold. And, when you guys did acquire the New York Harbor, it had, many people excited. And then it also kind of, raised eyebrows. You say, hey, look, there's a lot of gold companies, but this is a past producing mine that has, I know that at least the old reports on the grades were fantastic.
Yes.
And so when you look at all that and you look at this, do you think that you're stepping into a broader commodities market? Do you think this is a decade long market? Is this a 70s metals and commodities market that we're stepping into, or what?
Yeah, the last bull run was probably almost 15 years. And I think, when you look at the comments by some of the big companies that were, they kind of missed the ball. I think one of these CEOs of a major copper company, I think he basically said it best. He said, we kind of missed the ball on the last run. So now they're, definitely getting ready for this one. Is it going to be 15, 20 years? Can't really say, but is it going to be, significant amount of time, a period long enough for us to enjoy some good returns? Absolutely. I think it's going to be a minimum 5 years. But yeah, it can definitely be 10 to 15 years, because if you look at where we are 2021, by the time they're talking about ramping up car production, the targets are more like 2025. They really want to have a lot of the cars transitioning to EV, and then 2030 it's going to be pretty much 100% electric. So, it's only time will tell, but that should give you sort of an idea of how long this run can last.
So give us what's going on at, update with Phoenix Copper, some of the goals, considering this broader commodities market, considering this incredible sentiment, especially from the copper renewables perspective, which is just absurd, the amount of new demand they need. Give us an idea of where you guys fit in and the goals moving forward here.
Yeah, I think we acquired the property at the beginning of March. We're a month in, and right now we just want a better sense of the project as a whole. And, we want to get our exploration program going. So we're trying to get a better understanding. So we're compiling data as we speak. Next thing that we've done is we're going to require more capital. So we've lined up an investor for $1 million financing. We announced that last week, and we should probably wind up closing sometime this week. So now we're well positioned, and, how we fit into the big scheme of things is we're the little guys that does all of the sort of the precursory work before a mine actually goes into production. So, I see years of that coming, lots of drilling, proving up the resource and really showing that it's economical and viable. And if the grades are consistent with what we've seen historically, yeah, this York Harbor definitely has a very strong possibility of going back into production. And that's what we like to see. We like to, that's why we got into it. We like to see York Harbor producing again. And 7% zinc and 3 to 12% copper. Those are very strong numbers, and I think they could be replicated. In fact, we've been talking a lot about the EV market. Well, the other interesting discovery that, the explorer previous to us had was that they assayed for cobalt, and the grades that were coming out, 0.5% are very interesting to us. It's not a primary, but it's once again we get secondary exposure into another metal related to the electric car.
Yeah, the cobalt one is pretty interesting. Elon's, they're going to need to find their ways to ethically mine that, and there's not that much of it. There's the Jervois out in Idaho, so that's a pretty interesting setup for you guys as well. What do you think about? I've heard people argue before that in the silver market, the exit of many silver mines in the future, it may be technology companies buying mines, because one of the consequences of them doing this and all this money going into tech so long is, the underfunding in these mines with how much is needed is just, it's really, it's bonkers. And so, you may see a point where people are really scrambling to secure. And Keith Neumeyer told me that he sat in the room with executives at Samsung, and they are terrified, he said, about getting front run or people discovering exactly how much they need. Mm-hmm. And, there's a similar type of theme to copper like that as well. What do you think about all that?
Yeah,
I saw you smiling.
Yeah, it's. I had another conversation, and we're just talking about Bitcoin as an example, and the number of computers out there, and you can't build these computers without certain components, and a lot of those components are related to metals, and the metals are you can't have one industry without the other. Is sort of what I'm saying, in the sense that these metals are the raw materials. They're sort of like the key components to so many other industries. And you bring up technology. Yeah, it's amazing how much cash that companies like Apple are sitting on, right? And I think they're just starting to figure that out, where they're saying, hey, maybe we should really start to lock up, not just through offtakes. Now they're investing directly into the mines. So yes, 100%. I think we'll see a little bit more of a shift. And you're right. When you think about rare earth metals, China's whole restriction on, hey, we're not going to allow the export of these metals. Yeah, that should freak out a lot of companies who are so dependent. No, 100% agree with that statement. That I think we will probably see a little bit more of a they used the term a little bit more vertically integrated, at least in the supply sense. And I think that's, that would be smart if they had the capital to deploy on definitely investing in early on some of the mines that are, about to come online, that are in that development phase for sure, to really lock up that security and supply.
Yeah, for a global media that sure likes to scare everyone, one fear story we've never heard much from is commodity shortages in terms of metals and these types of everyday products that we like to use. And yeah, I never heard much from that, and I thought it was interesting what you said. It's interesting that they always need a good story, but that's one story they really aren't telling, and it's a very compelling story. And the first evidence of seeing it slip a little bit, as you suggested, was, Elon, like tweeting, hey, who has a good nickel deposit, and a couple stories like that, but it's kind of been focused on nickel and cobalt. We've seen maybe a couple companies step in and buy, or as you said, get involved in offtake. But you said that you think they're starting to wake up to that. And what does Apple need for everything? They need these metals. What is all these big companies? So do you think that waking up process is starting?
Well, I think that waking up process is, in a way, it's kind of going back to sort of the old way of thinking. Like, you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned there was silver mines, right? And that was sort of the hedge for some of these families. I'm not going to mention which one, but I was reading up on one family, very wealthy family in the U.S. And they were involved in a lot of different forms of companies like media, but their hedge was they also owned a silver mine, a small silver. And I'm sure I'm just basing this sort of on just the one family's profile that I read, but I'm sure if you dig into a few more of them, I think you'll find that mine ownership sometimes is a good hedge, and it's as much as Bitcoin has been sort of the in the spotlight, and but there's something about owning physical metal, like the whole concept of stacking and owning your own bullions and things like that. I think that goes a long way, something tangible, so to speak. And I think companies will definitely look towards broadening their how they hold their assets, because this is another form of asset, just like Tesla saying, well, we're going to buy $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, that's our, it's instead of holding cash, it's because they don't want to hold cash. They're just putting into a certain other asset class. And, typically mines were not accessible in the sense that everyone thinks that it has to be $1 billion plus in order for it to be a mine. But you can have much smaller mines. And, and if it's generating a certain level of cash flow, why not? And even if it's not mined, the metal still exists in the rock, in the ground, which is an asset. So, it's in a way, it's kind of you can get into all sorts of tangents on this topic, but it's in my personal opinion, it's just another form of asset that money's flowing into. That's my perspective.
Fascinating, right? Because some people were saying, well, companies are buying Bitcoin, people should buy gold. But it does make sense if you're Apple. Why would you buy gold bullion? If you need a silver mine or a copper mine, or you need a broad resource mine, you get right in, and it's a compelling, interesting, and really fascinating, I think, macro discussion on copper and other base metals, silver especially, and the real squeeze that can come over, I guess, the next 3 to 10 years or so, and the necessity for big players to get involved. So, of course, makes it attractive to a little company like Phoenix Gold and the broad resources you have. So I appreciate you coming on today, explaining this macro story, because it is compelling. And, when we make this channel, we want to talk about the macro to, bring new people into understanding the opportunities in commodities and metals. And so I appreciate you sharing that. For a conclusion here, why don't you give us anything I missed on Phoenix Gold? In addition to that, we'll have a website right there down below and whatnot. But let us know any other big things I missed, and of course, where you're trading.
Yeah, no, I think we're just getting started. So, I think in the coming weeks and months, you're going to see a lot of news coming out of the company. It's timing's right. I think we're sort of entering a little bit of a bull market, and owning stocks is just another form of we're just another asset class, and hopefully the guys who got in earlier. They're benefiting, but I think there's going to be a lot of room to grow for the company as a whole as we start to really build up that value. So we're listed on the TSX Venture, trading symbol is PXA, and check out our website. Send me an email, anything, and I think because of I've received a lot of emails and a lot of contacts. Trying to reach out to me. So I think I'm finally going to get onto Twitter. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think the next time, hopefully I'm on again. Next time I'm able to provide an update for the company, hopefully might Twitter account will be active, and I'll have a lot more information available there.
Yeah, we're not publishing this video unless we force you onto Twitter. It's the exchange. Now it'll be fantastic for for the company, especially as you're finding interesting articles, throwing all that up there, help educate the broader environment on that. So I appreciate you coming on, Andrew. It was great to talk to you. For everyone listening, please make sure that you hit the like button on this side, right over there, and this side, wherever you see it, to send this video out to more people. If you love Phoenix Gold, comment down below. Go Phoenix, go, right there down below in the comments. And be sure to check out the links right there down below. And thanks for joining, Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.